back to the late night review, and tonight I really want to get into a movie that I've been waiting to do for a while, and it's one of my favorites of all time. It's the original Death Wish with Charles Bronson. This movie is one I've seen a gazillion times. It's a movie that I grew up watching and have a ton of nostalgia for. I really, really like this. In my other video, Hard Times, late night review video I did about Hard Times, I think I mentioned that my favorite Charles Bronson movies are Death Wish 1 and 2, The Mechanic, and usually those three are my favorites, but Hard Times is close. It's right up there. And then there's other movies too that I like a lot. But I think Death Wish 1 and 2 and The Mechanic are my three favorites, and it's hard to choose just one. Death Wish 2, maybe. I like just a titch, just a little bit more than the original, maybe. But they're both really good. And then sometimes I like The Mechanic the best. It has some type of subtlety to it, like a subtle, charming type of atmosphere with the seriousness of that movie. But tonight I'm talking about Death Wish 1, the original, and then the remake with Bruce Willis. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I thought he did a really good job, and it was nice to see an old school action movie like that in modern times. It was really a nice experience. I enjoyed it a lot. The subject matter is very serious and very could be very sad. His family's attacked in this movie. If you haven't seen it, a lot of people have, but if you haven't seen the original, it's pretty much basically the same premise as the remake. His family's attacked. Charles Bronson starts out as kind of a pacifist in this movie, and then there's a home invasion. His wife is killed. His daughter is just never the same. They're sexually assaulted and beaten. His wife dies from it, and he's just devastated. His daughter will never be the same in this movie, this story. She's got extreme PTSD. She's emotionally and mentally really, really messed up forever, and she'll never be the same. There's sad moments in here, very, very deep, sad moments, and you can see what he's going through, and you see the transition that he makes from a pacifist to someone who wants justice and goes out and seeks justice. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And if you like this type of movie and you haven't seen this, I think you're in for a real interesting experience. And it's a really good movie. I can't say it's a really fun, entertaining movie, except when he goes out and takes care of business and goes out and gets the bad guys. That's entertaining. That's satisfying. It's a disturbing movie, but that's because of the subject matter. But I really like this movie quite a bit. Michael Winner is the director, and he's directed a lot of different movies, action movies especially, I believe. And he directed Charles Bronson in multiple films. In part two, he directed part two and part three, I believe. He directed this one, the second one, and then other Charles Bronson movies, to my knowledge. I think he might have directed the Mechanic too. I'd have to check again, but yeah, really interesting director, a good director, and this is one of my favorite movies. He asked Charles Bronson to do this movie, and he explained the story, what goes on, and I told him about the film and what happens, and he said, "You want to do the movie?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd really like to do that." He said, "You mean the film?" And he said, "No, I'd like to go out and shoot muggers." So, his heart was in it. He was invested in this movie. He was into the character. We'll just leave it at that. He was really into the character, and he does a great job. This is a movie about justice. He goes out and seeks justice, and most people, I think, who are into action have seen this movie, but if you haven't, I recommend it highly if you like action and if you like a justice-driven type movie where the hero goes out and seeks vengeance or justice. I think it's justice. And it's a it's high on my list it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And it came out in the early 70s. At the time when it came out, it was a hit. It was controversial, but it was a hit. And I think it came out in the summertime, summer of 74 or 5, and it was just, everyone was talking about it. The newspapers, the television, TV shows, they were mentioning it and how it just swept everybody up in the summer of 74, 75, I believe. But yeah, it just took the nation by storm. It was controversial, but it was a hit. And then, of course, years later in the 80s, I think 84, can't remember exactly what year, but part two came out, and that was really a hit too. And that was another movie that was really great. Maybe I'll do a video about that in the future. And but yeah, this first one started it all, and I think Charles Bronson fit the part so well. He plays a tough guy really really well, but he starts out in here as a pacifist, and I think he's actually convincing. How he acts, how he talks, and his behavior, the atmosphere. And then when he goes out, after the tragedy with his family, and he goes out for the first time, and he does the first one, the first killing, where a thug is trying to rob him, and he shoots the guy. And then he goes home. I think the acting after his first kill, I think, is really, really good. He acts like a guy who's never done it before. He acts like a guy who's really shook up and nervous about what he did. And to see the transition, I think one of the best parts of this movie is how the transition is from going from a pacifist to somebody who's doing what he does and going out seeking justice. And the way he acts after the first one, I think, is very realistic and convincing. He goes up and vomits in the toilet, and it's a good acting performance by Charles Bronson. And I think that this movie pretty much has all the elements that you would look for in a film like this and in a story like this. And if you haven't seen it, I think you'll like it a lot if you're into this type of movie. And check out part two as well. I think the whole series is good except for the fifth one. I wouldn't recommend the fifth one. I think you can miss that if you want to, but the first four, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are solid movies. And this is a franchise that has pretty solid sequels except for the fifth one. Part 4 I like a lot. I actually like part 4 a little bit better than part 3, even though I do like part 3. Part 4 is a little more grounded, and part 1 and 2 are more grounded than part 3. But it's not, I mean, that hard to imagine. I think it definitely could happen. All four of them are possibilities for sure, and likely to happen in real life if the circumstances are there. So I don't think it's that far-fetched. But the first two are my favorite. And then after that, I think part 4, and then part 3, and then you can miss part 5 if you want to. Sorry, Charles, but the first 4 were really, really good, I think, and 1 and 2 being the best. And this movie here, if you like movies where, especially if you like Charles Bronson, because he does this type of movie so well. If you like movies where he's going out hunting the bad guys, waiting for something to happen, seeking justice for the innocent, seeking justice for his loved ones, I think you'll like this movie quite a bit. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's one of my favorites. And Charles Bronson, he was actually, I think, in his early 50s when he made this movie. Still in great shape. There's a couple times where he takes his shirt off in here, and he has really good definition, and he's stayed in good shape. If you've seen Hard Times, he was older in that too. I can't remember which one came out first, but he's always been in good shape, and good. He could have been a good fighter, I think, in real life. You can tell he's worked out, but he's perfect for this type of role. And I think that he is probably, I think, to me, he is one of the best action stars of all time. But I think he's underrated because when people usually talk about action stars and movie stars, I don't hear a lot about Charles Bronson. And if I do, it's not enough. So I think he deserves more credit. He's always been one of my favorites. I like him a lot. I think that he really draws me in to his movies. I can watch a movie that I'm kind of bored with, but if he's in it, I'll watch it just because of him. and he's very interesting. They don't make movie stars like that anymore, really. So if you get a chance to watch this, I think it's really worth it. It's old school, and it has that gritty atmosphere to it. So I recommend this movie. I think it's a very good film. It's one of my favorites of all time. So check it out, watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. This has been the Late Night Review. Like and subscribe. And until next time, take care, everybody. Have a good night.